The day started like any other at the shelter. Cold, concrete floors, rows of cages, and the quiet desperation of animals waiting for a second chance. But in the very last kennel, curled up in a tight ball, was a husky unlike any other they'd seen. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He didn't move. The staff had named him Echo, but no one had ever actually heard his voice. He had been rescued off a remote highway after likely being abandoned for weeks, maybe months. His fur was matted, patches missing, ribs faintly visible, but it was his silence that told the real story. Echo wasn't just starving or injured. They say huskies are vocal by nature, known for their howls, their chatter, their constant desire to talk to their humans. But not Echo. He wouldn't even lift his head when someone passed. Volunteers tried everything, treats, toys, soft words. Nothing reached him. He had built a wall so high around himself that even kindness couldn't climb it. One of the workers, a woman named Lisa, began sitting by his cage every morning. No pressure, no words, just presence. She would sip her coffee, read a book, sometimes just sit in silence beside him. And slowly, inch by inch, he started to uncurl. First, his ears perked. Then, a sideways glance. Then, one morning, a tiny, almost imperceptible tail wag. That was the moment. Lisa knew he was still in there. Buried, quiet, but not gone. A local couple, Mark and Jenna, were looking for a dog. Not a puppy, not a perfect show dog. Just a soul that needed love. Lisa hesitated before showing them Echo. "He doesn't talk," she warned. "He barely moves. He's been through something, but I don't know what." Still, they asked to see him. When they walked up to the kennel, Echo didn't bark or approach, but he looked up, not past them at them, and his eyes said more than any bark ever could. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't joy or excitement, but there was recognition. A flicker of something that had been lost. They took him home that day. The first few days were rough. Echo hid behind furniture. He refused food unless they left the room. He flinched at sudden movements. Mark set up a corner just for him, blankets, water, soft toys. Jenna read aloud each night, hoping he'd get used to the sound of her voice. There were no expectations. They knew healing had no timeline. But on the sixth night, something changed. Jenna was in the kitchen, heating up some leftovers. When she heard a soft, throaty ree-roo, she froze. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't even a whine. But it was something. She rushed to the living room and found Echo standing tail, stiff, ears up, staring at the TV. There was a dog commercial playing. He'd spoken for the first time. From that moment, it was like a dam breaking. He didn't go full husky right away. But every day, a new sound emerged. Little yips when he got excited, low woofs when he was confused, howl shaky, uncertain whenever Jenna sang along to music. It became clear very quickly. Echo had a lot to say. He had been silent for so long, bottling it all up. Now, he wanted to speak every chance he got. Mark started documenting the sounds. Each one had meaning. A quick double woof when he wanted food. A rising double quotes woo dash, WOOO, when he wanted to go outside. And a long, dramatic howl whenever Jenna said the word bat. It was like living with a furry drama king, and they loved it. But his voice wasn't just about being funny. It became a way to understand how deeply he felt things. One night, after a thunderstorm rattled the house, they found Echo pacing, panicked, making short, anxious cries. Not because of the noise, but because the window was open and he couldn't find Jenna. She had stepped outside to check on the power line. The second she came back in, he ran to her, barked once sharply, and leaned against her legs, trembling. His voice wasn't just noise, it was connection. It was trust. Over time, Echo's vocabulary grew. He learned that speaking got attention. Sometimes, maybe too much. He once threw a full-blown tantrum because they switched his dog food brand. Another time, he refused to go on a walk until he got the exact blue harness he liked. If they tried the red one, meltdown. Mark joked they were raising a toddler in a fur coat. But beneath the sass and sound, Echo was still healing. He would still flinch sometimes at shadows. He hated being left alone. They installed cameras and could hear him softly howling at the door when they were gone. It wasn't mischief, it was fear, the kind that only abandonment can teach. One night, Jenna sat down and looked through the adoption papers again. Echo had been picked up near a burned-down cabin. Animal control had found food wrappers and old dog toys. New micro sheepy, new collar, just ashes and silence. Whatever happened before he got to the shelter, it had taught him not to trust his own voice. Maybe he had cried for help once and no one came. But now, he cried, howled, barked, growled, and even grumbled when he was annoyed. And every single time, someone answered. That, more than anything, rebuilt him. The internet couldn't get enough of him. Mark posted one clip of Echo howling along to Jenna singing, and it went viral overnight. People began sharing stories of their own huskies, of dogs who found their voice after being rescued. Echo became a little symbol of hope, a reminder that silence doesn't mean emptiness. Sometimes, it's just waiting for the right ears to listen. And once the noise comes back, it's beautiful. The best moment came a year after his adoption. Jenna had invited over a friend who brought a young child, maybe 5 years old. The little girl had recently lost her own dog and hadn't smiled in weeks. Echo, usually nervous around strangers, cautiously approached her. He sat, tilted his head, and let out a soft woo-woo. The girl giggled. Echo repeated it. She laughed again. Then he let out a full, long howl, playful and proud. The child howled back. For the next hour, they went back and forth, having a conversation no one else could understand, but one that spoke volumes. That was the first time the little girl had smiled since saying goodbye to her own pet, and it was Echo who brought that smile back. For a dog once left for dead, once voiceless and afraid, to become someone else's comforts, someone else's laughter. That's the real rescue. Because yes, Echo was saved, but maybe in small ways. He's been saving others too. This is what rescue really means. It's not just giving a dog a roof or food. It's giving them a reason to speak again, a reason to trust, a reason to sing. Echo didn't just find his voice. He found a family that listened. Life after rescue doesn't move in a straight line. It's not a single happily ever after. It's 1,000 small victories, 100 quiet stumbles, and moments that, at first glance, look ordinary, but mean everything. For Echo, the husky who once didn't speak at all, his recovery was a mosaic of such moments. Some were loud, dramatic declarations of joy. Others were silent nods to a past slowly losing its grip. After his first year in the new home, Echo had fully established himself as the household's most expressive member. He had a scheduled wake-up, stretch with a theatrical yawn woof, inspect the backyard, complain if it was raining, demand breakfast, and then flop dramatically onto the couch. If it was the kind of day he felt like adventuring, he still had his moments of insecurity, like when someone knocked too hard at the door, or if a car backfired on the street. But his confidence had grown. His fur was thick and soft, his eyes brighter than ever, and his howls, they were up. Sometimes, neighbors down the street would often hear him having conversations with the mail truck. Echo had a vendetta against that truck. He believed it taunted him, showing up every day, but never coming to say hi. Mark joked that they didn't need a doorbell anymore. Echo let him know everything, including the squirrel that dared to sit on the fence for more than 5 seconds. But beyond the barking and howling, Echo had learned something even more powerful: connection. Jenna began taking him to a local therapy animal training program, not because they needed him to be a perfect, obedient dog, but because they saw something special in him. He had a way of making people feel understood. His noises weren't just funny, they were comforting. Honest, he could walk into a room and instantly read it. If someone was anxious, he'd lay his head in their lap. If someone was sad, he'd softly woo-woo until they smiled. He didn't speak human, but he always knew what needed to be said. At the Center for Children with Autism, Echo was a quiet superstar. The kids didn't need a dog that followed every command. They needed one who just showed up as he was, real and imperfect. Echo would lie beside them while they played or read. Sometimes he'd howl gently in response to their laughter. A few of the children, usually silent, started mimicking his sounds. It became a game, then a habit, and for some, even the first step towards speaking. One therapist told Jenna, "That dog has a soul that listens deeper than most people do." And it was true. Echo wasn't trained to help, he was just being himself, and that was enough. But not every chapter was joyful. About 2 years after his adoption, Echo became sick. It started with low energy, refusing food, and a reluctance to vocalize. The house felt too quiet. His parents rushed him to the vet. After several tests, the diagnosis came: an intestinal blockage. Emergency surgery was needed. Mark and Jenna were devastated. This dog who had clawed his way back from silence was now facing another life-threatening challenge. They stayed up all night, pacing the clinic floor, waiting for updates. Hours passed. The vet finally came out with a tired smile. Echo had pulled through, but recovery was slow. For the first time since his rescue, he was silent again. No howls, no woo, just quiet breathing and tired eyes. Jenna sat with him every night, just like Lisa had done at the shelter years ago. She whispered, not expecting a response, just letting him hear her voice. Mark played back old recordings of Echo howling, hoping it might remind him of who he was. Days passed. Nothing. Until one morning, while Jenna was reading softly, she paused and said, "Echo, it's okay. You can talk again when you're ready." That's when she heard it, a tiny, scratchy, almost unsure. Tears filled her eyes. He was back. From then on, his voice returned, softer at first, but steadier with each passing day. His first post-recovery howl was during a thunderstorm. Normally scared of the sound, Echo stood tall, ears perked, and let out a long, steady call, not in fear, but defiance. He wasn't hiding from storms anymore. He was singing through them. The community rallied around Echo. He now had fans all over the country. His story had gone viral more than once. People sent letters, gifts, paintings of him howling, but it was never about fame. It was about representation. Echo stood for every dog who had been abandoned, every animal who had gone silent because no one had ever listened. His story gave those stories a stage. Mark and Jenna started a small local rescue outreach project in Echo's name. Echo's voice became the name of the initiative, aimed at rescuing dogs who were labeled unadoptable because they were too quiet, too fearful, or simply overlooked. They wanted to find voices where others only saw silence. The first dog they saved under the program was a pit mix named Luna, found tied behind a dumpster, barely moving. Echo met her slowly. She didn't speak either, but over weeks, something happened. One day, Luna barked. Echo barked back. And that was the start of another rescue within a rescue. Echo never forgot what it was like to be voiceless. And now that he had found his own, he was using it not just to communicate, but to guide, to comfort, to lead others out of the same darkness he once lived in. He wasn't just a pet. He was a legacy. A living reminder that broken doesn't mean beyond repair. That silence isn't absence, it's waiting for the right love to unlock the sound. As years passed, Echo aged. His face grayed. His steps slowed. But his spirit stayed loud. He never stopped howling at sirens, singing with kids, or complaining about vegetables. His personality remained as sharp and hilarious as ever. And his family. They still listened to every sound like it was sacred. Because, in a world full of noise, some voices are more precious than others. The ones that almost never got to speak. Echo's journey from a silent, shivering dog in a cage to a loud, lovable icon of hope proves something powerful. That rescue isn't just about saving a life. It's about restoring a voice. And every bark, every howl, every woo-woo he shares with the world is a message to us all. Even when no one listens at first, keep speaking. Someone will hear you. If this story gave you hope, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to Rescue Animal Tales. Because Echo's voice deserves to echo in every heart that believes in second chances. And together, we can make sure no story, no voice is ever left unheard again.